Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Human Echoes podcast.
I am Albert Berg.
And I'm Tony Southcott, and we're coming to you today live with a Star Wars The Force Awakens special episode.
Yes, we are doing a sort of a mixed review of it. We're going to start off with no spoilers. So if you've not seen the movie, we're going to, in the beginning portion of this review, we will not talk about anything major spoiler-wise, although I know a lot of y'all just don't want to know anything.
Yeah.
In which case, we're going to maybe cover some broad kind of topic stuff in the plot. So if you're just completely uninterested in anything spoiler-wise, go ahead and I guess turn it off now. But we will let you know when we're getting into the real nitty-gritty going forward. That'll be several minutes in. We're going to do a more general review of the stuff that isn't going to ruin your experience of the movie if you're into that kind of thing. And then we'll get into the spoilers. Partly because we were going to not do a spoiler review at all, but then we realized that we have a little bit differing opinions on this movie, and I kind of wanted to get into maybe what worked and what didn't work and what could have been better with Tony. So we wanted to have the option to talk about some more specifics in the spoiler section of the podcast. So without further ado, Tony Southcott, what did you think of Star Wars Episode 7, The Force Awakens?
I think that it was probably the best acted Star Wars that's ever been made. Like, I felt like Boyega and I'm trying to remember the girl's last name. It's like Daisy something.
Daisy Ridley.
Like, I thought that they were absolutely perfect, like, cast choices for Finn and Rey. I thought that was an awesome part of it. I thought that the effects were really well done, and it was just like the perfect mix of like the practical effects with the CGI. Like, there were a few beings that you could tell were a little more CGI, but it wasn't overdone in that. Like, I just really, really liked this movie a lot.
I agree with everything, all the specifics that you just said. I also thought that the acting and the way the characters were, not just the way they were acted, but the way they were written, was pretty great. And the effects were also pretty great. Although maybe not groundbreaking, it seemed like they were really... it almost seemed like they were so afraid of using computer effects that the computer effects that they used sometimes weren't as good as the... Like, I know that you guys wanted to show that practical effects were better, but some of these things I felt like, as far as the computerized angle, could have been done better in today's day and age, and have been done better in some movies, especially in a space combat fighting movie. But those are little nitpicks. But my main issue with the movie, and the reason that I'm not as over the moon about it as Tony was, is because I felt like the plot as it was kind of thin as far as how things connected together, how things flowed from one thing into another thing. I guess we should talk a little bit about the characters, because we both really liked these characters. Your two sort of main new people that carry the movie all the way through are these characters of Rey and Finn. Finn is a not First Order. What are they called? Oh, they are called the First Order.
Yeah, it was First Order.
First Order
is basically and First Order is basically the the remnants of the Empire kind of fighting back. Whereas before it was the rebels. Like, this is like the rebel version of the Empire.
Sort of.
Yeah.
Yes. Although maybe more powerful than the Empire was, but we're not calling ourselves the Empire, but we want to be like the Empire.
They want to be the new Empire.
One of the things, I think maybe sort of the single overriding thing that bugged me a lot about this is that there are many, many things that are the same as the original Star Wars, but they try to make them, like, they call them different things. They still have the desert planet. It's just not called Tatooine anymore.
Yeah,
for no discernible plot reason. They're just, well, we have Jakku now. It's not Tatooine. We weren't going to start on our, but it could have been a different type of planet. You know, you still have the Empire, but they're not calling them the Empire anymore. And this is a little bit of a spoiler, so I won't say specifically, but there's like, the people fighting against the Empire are still there, but there's weird stuff going on with them, and they've kind of, I'm actually
resistance.
not sure what was going on with that part, Tony. Not gonna lie, I was confused what was going on with the resistance. Um,
I'll
and it
go
was
into
just like,
what I think on that in the in the spoiler portion of the podcast.
it just seemed like they're like, oh no, look, we're different. We have new things, but they're the same things. And I couldn't figure out why they couldn't just call them the Empire and, the what well, you guys saw the poster. I don't want to, but there's some stuff at the end that happens at the end of several Star Wars movies, but they're like, no, it's not like that. It's bigger. And Han Solo's even like, yeah, so it's bigger. Okay. Like they hang a lampshade in the fact that they're not doing much new stuff with the plot at all.
The thing is, like, it felt like it had to be a reboot in a lot of ways just to like cover up like the badness of the prequels. Like they needed this movie to get back on track. I can pretty much guarantee you the next one's not going to have that certain element to it.
Well, hopefully not. But I'm saying it felt like they were leaning too heavily on the prequels, and in some cases, are not the prequels. The first movies that came. Well, they're all prequels now, I guess. To this,
Yeah,
movies
4,
that came
5, and 6.
before, um, and there are some moments that really work. Just because it's a moment of fan service, there are things that are earned in this movie by the other preceding movies. Things that show up, people that show up, that when they show up, the moment is grand because of everything that led up to it, and it's not like a cheap just, oh yeah, well, yeah, we're in Star Wars.
Yeah, it's not stealing lines. It's actually like there's build up to it.
Right, but it did feel like that. To me, I guess it felt like that there was just this series of set pieces that, all right, we're gonna have our guys go here now. Okay, they're gonna go here now. Okay, they're gonna go here now. And I never really felt the impact of any particular character's choices within the actual narrative of the movie. I never felt like, with all these great characters that we have, they're not really allowed to drive the plot. And I was a little bit disappointed by that. There was a couple times when people decide to do things, but it really...
I was going to say the entire like beginning sequence with Finn is about like a pretty major decision that he makes. And then it's just kind of like cascading of things after that. And I kind of chalked it up to like the actual title, like The Force Awakening, like things are just set in motion by the Force.
But the choice that Finn makes at the beginning, we don't get to see much lead up to it. And it really helps that he's a fantastic actor and that character's a lot of fun to watch. But the transition from I'm a bad guy to I'm a good guy takes place in seemingly the blink of an eye. We have one scene where he's visibly shaken and sort of thinking about what he's doing, but we have
he said
a lot
that was his first battle too.
Right, but he'd also been brainwashed for his entire life. Like, that he was like set up to be this guy for his entire, he's was raised from a child, from parents he never knew to be a stormtrooper, and he gets in his first battle, he's like, maybe these guys aren't so cool. Again, I'm not saying that you can't justify it, but they're like, looking back on it, it just felt like a sort of a weak connection. And there are a lot of those weak connections of things that technically make sense, but didn't feel natural in a flow of a story kind of a way. When they meet a certain character, like kind of at the end of the first act, it's and a lot of stuff sort of at that beginning of the end of the first act is just like, man, everybody's right here in the right place to show up for the plot. Isn't this great? So that kind of, I don't know. It felt a little bit. It felt a lot contrived to me. The plotting felt very contrived. There were a lot of great moments, like individual scenes that you're like, oh wow, that's great. But in the context of the movie, sometimes they didn't really feel like they'd been built up enough beforehand. That it was just like, let's have this character do a cool thing.
I never once felt that. Not at all. I was just sitting there like almost in tears the whole movie, like we actually have real Star Wars again. Like basically this was J.J. Abrams like opening up his cheeks and spraying the prequels with feces.
And I didn't want that. I wanted him to open up his mouth and vomit out an awesome movie to me.
And that's what the next one will be.
Trash.
And that's what this one was for the most part. Like, I honestly
Okay.
like this movie to me was better than Mad Max, better than any of the other movies we've talked about this year, and by leaps and bounds.
N- Okay. I, I'm gonna say I do not agree with Tony Southcott's statement. This is not a better movie than Mad Max,
But we knew you
in
weren't
my
gonna agree
opinion.
with that, like, before this happened because you already knew all the stuff that was going to happen from speculation, and you were already, like, down on it before you went into it.
I was not down on it before I went into it. I got chills, Tony, when the Lucasfilm logo came up, and I was like, "It's about to say a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. They're about to play a Star Wars theme. I'm about to see an opening crawl." I was like, I was getting goosebumps. I was like jumping up and down in my chair. I was pumped up. I'm not, but I actually I watched the movie, Tony. I saw the things that happened, and some of them weren't what I thought were great storytelling choices.
It was a great story. Don't listen to Al. He's just a, like, negative Nancy.
How did you feel? Again, without getting into too many specifics, how did you feel about the character of Kylo Ren?
I thought that he was pretty fascinating, like, I'm like, it's hard to get into it without spoilers, like, I liked that he was a little more angry than some of the other Sith we've seen, like, he has a little bit more trouble controlling himself.
Yeah, he really his to me he was fascinating, and I saw some people kind of not like I read some stuff afterwards, some fan reactions and stuff. Saw a few people that didn't buy into him, and I can kind of see where you might come from on that. But I really felt like that he's not as much of a like a boogeyman as Darth Vader is. He wants to be that, but he's so much more conflicted and just like out of control.
He's
I
also a
mean,
lot
that
less experienced than Vader, so, like, he could end up being that someday, but, like, he's just not at that point in his, like, in his career, basically.
well, we don't know exactly how experienced he is. Even from all the stuff we know in the movie, we know that he knows some stuff, but we don't see him. I mean, he did stuff with the Force in this movie that we've never seen anybody else do. I
Yeah,
mean,
kinda
like
like sorcerer level stuff.
right. So you can say he's not trained that well, but man, he sure says it seems powerful until some things happen that anyway.
Yeah, but
Um
you also can tell that he's a little bit green just from his fighting style. Like,
right, and that
it's not
made
as polished as it could be, like, it just feels like he's definitely, like, he's not a master yet.
no, well,
He's
there's
out there and
nobody
he's
even
sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying there's nobody really to bring him to that point at this point. Like he has had people teaching him, but you get the sense that this is a galaxy that's really feeling the absence of the force. And he is kind of really a wild card. And it's, just you never really know what he's going to do from time to time. And I thought that was fascinating. I thought that it was fascinating that he is trying to be something that he's not sure that he can be, that he's, um, fighting for basically the best, to become the thing that he thinks he needs to be, but he's not 100% there. He's all over the place. That lightsaber that he has that's all raw and jagged, that is so representative of him
Yeah,
and his sort of like inner conflict and just being this crackling power but not really containing it that well.
and, after seeing his lightsaber in action with the crossguard, are you still a fan of it? Are you neutral on it? What did you think?
I felt the same way about it I did as I did when I first saw it in the trailer, which was that it was fine.
Yeah.
It looked cool. It was, I mean, and the way he used that cross guard at one point, I was like, yeah, that's what I would do. Good job.
Yep.
Um, so I thought all of that, I had no problem with it in the movie. I didn't have a problem with any of the mechanics of how anything worked. I don't think. Everything that they showed on screen was neat. There was those. I really I don't know why, but I liked in the opening of the movie they had those troop transports, and they were very very reminiscent of those like landing boats that they had on D-Day, where the thing drops down. It's basically just a box for people to be in, and then drop down and run out. I
Yep.
love the design of some of the new spaceships, although there was a lot of boxy stuff in the newer ones. But it was a lot of cool stuff. The aliens were all, I mean, just gorgeously rendered, and a lot of really cool practical effects and things. So I loved all that stuff. All the design of it was great.
Yeah. I really liked some of the face rendering. Like, there's a new character that Han introduces us to, and she's pretty interesting. I thought they did a good job with her effects, and the one that Ray is dropping off parts to as she's scavenging. Like, I really liked the facial effects on there because, like, it could easily have fallen into cartoonish, but it ended up working out pretty well. Like, it
Was
was.
that the character played by Simon Pegg?
I think so.
I know he was in the movie, and I saw a picture of him with his mask off, and it looked like. I mean, I don't know that I saw the mask, but it looked like it could have been that kind of character.
He definitely had a big bodysuit on, so. I'd
Yeah,
have to look through it again. Like, I might have to see it again just to try to like spot his voice, but it was definitely interesting.
but all the world building is great in this. The planet Ray is on with that giant star destroyer, like they really, despite the fact that it's basically Tatooine again, they really do cool stuff with all of those things, and the visuals in this are amazing. I mean, it's what you saw in the trailer, but times 11 as far as the visuals go. They're just more of it, and it's stretched out really well, and it works.
The set pieces felt a lot more like 4, 5, and 6 than they did 1, 2, and 3. And that was one of the complaints that people always had with the prequels, that everything was like shinier and newer and everything. This actually kind of had like a good mix of the in between. Like,
I
with,
actually would have liked to seen maybe a little bit more less technology, because this is almost like 3, 4, and 5, or 4, 5, and 6 were a universe in decay, right?
yeah,
And now this is a universe that is 30 years after this massive war, and these, the Empire surrogate or whatever we're calling them is just now clawing their way out of obscurity into some kind of power. It would have been neat if they maybe were more ragtag than they were, because it seemed like they still had a ton of money and chips and like really shiny new things that if they
like
had been.
Kylo's ship was pretty cool. Like, it was definitely a little bit high tech.
Yeah, I just would have liked to see more sort of like rundownness to their, like what if they were fighting, like they had some shiny new TIE fighters, but then like they also had like some beat up old TIE fighters from the original, and they're just like, oh, you got to get the. And it would have been neat to see that kind of thing, just especially for that, to kind of have them be back on their heels and then still like, oh wow, no, they're a real threat.
Yeah.
I'm being hypothetical about a movie that doesn't exist, and that's not a good review. But it would have been cool to see some of that. But it was, I mean, if you've seen the originals, it's still, all of the design elements are still the Empire design elements, updated slightly. They still really love gray. They still love horizontal lights along different things and
They're like
steps.
polished black.
Yes. They still really like walkways over giant chasms for some reason. So if you like that stuff, man, this movie has it.
What about Poe Dameron?
Poe Dameron was fine.
I know you hate the name, but
I don't
he's
hate the name.
character.
When did I say that?
Like, I remember in one of the podcasts, you were like, "Who has the dumbest name ever?"
Well, yes, but I don't hate it. It's just dumb, Tony. It would be rude to hate it after it's Captain Phasma's a pretty dumb name too.
Yeah.
Which I didn't dislike her, but she was just, what a non-use of a character.
Yeah. I'm kind of hoping she has a bigger role in the next ones. Otherwise, it's just like, oh, there's a Silver Stormtrooper.
Yeah. But Poe Dameron was great when he was on screen. I felt like I almost don't feel like it's a spoiler because of stuff we saw in the trailer, but there is I know a lot of y'all don't want to know anything, and I don't.
Is it time to move into the spoiler portion? Like, do you have any thoughts?
Maybe I want to talk. I'm just saying, like, there's a thing that happens pretty early with Poe Dameron that, you don't. I didn't really buy, and
yeah,
I mean, either. Because I had seen the trailers and I was like, I know this isn't what goes down, but it was the way that played out was a little bit unsatisfying to me. Anyway, I'm trying to think of other things that I can talk about without spoiling. I will say that, and not to get into I don't think this is a spoiler too much, but Han Solo is a really big presence in this movie, and he really works.
Yeah, it was bigger than I expected too, because I know that Harrison Ford was a little bit reluctant at first to get back into this. Like he didn't even want to be in Return of the Jedi, really.
Right, and his presence, like your three protagonists of most of the plot of the movie is Finn, Rey, and Han. You have other people that are in and out, but like it's those three people, and Chewie is along with Han. We have those three, and Chewie is, I guess, still a character, and BB-8. Let's just name everybody. Okay, and the Millennium Falcon. Um, they're all going on this adventure together, and it really, that ensemble worked really well together. And including, I did bring up BB-8 in passing, but BB-8 was amazing in this movie.
Yeah, like
Him and John Boyega had some awesome lines together.
He had like all the personality of R2, but because the way he could move his head, he was a little bit more expressive.
He was a little bit more emotive, and the humor in this is above what I remember from the original trilogy. But not slipping into like slapstick humor like we had in the prequels. This is almost Avengers like Marvel level humor, where you
definitely.
have high stakes things happening, but people are kind of glib about it and not too much. But one of the things I liked about the character of Finn was that he would say a lot of times what you were thinking in the audience or possibly saying. Like when you're cheering in the audience, a lot of times he's like, "Whoa! Did you see that? That was awesome!" And so that was kind of neat. He's almost, if you guys watch The Flash, he's like the one tech guy. I can't believe his name is escaping me, but who's always like giving everybody names and saying like, "Oh man, it's so cool. This guy has this power," or whatever, and sort of saying what the audience is thinking. And Finn does that a lot of times, and that is a really effective use of his character, I thought.
For sure. And it was interesting getting a little bit more input into the life of a stormtrooper, because the First Order actually does their stormtroopers different than the Empire did. Like the Empire actually recruited, and the First Order kind of like actually breeds them.
Breeds them or captures them or buys them, that was not clear. It wasn't. It was, Finn's just like, I didn't know my parents, and that was all of the backstory and the explanation we got for their stormtrooper. And we heard something about reprogramming at one point, or re-indoctrinating, or I guess my assumption was brainwashing, basically.
Yeah.
But there was a lot of things in this movie that were not very well explained. And to talk about that more, we should go into the spoiler portion of the podcast.
I think it is time. Do you have any last thoughts?
My last thoughts are, I don't dislike this movie. This is a good movie, but I don't think it's great. And you guys if you watched the Human Echoes podcast, the episode that came out this Friday, you'll remember that I was talking about the review by the guy from Birth Movies Death, where he said it's okay. I'm kind of on the same page with him. I've read a good number of reviews, and even Rotten Tomatoes has an overwhelmingly positive score for this movie. But when you read a lot of
94% last night.
Was it at 94? It was at 95 last time I looked. When you read a lot of the reviews in their entirety, they do still mention like, hey, there's some problems with this movie. So Rotten Tomatoes has a little bit of not a problem, I guess. I mean, it's just the way that they rate it.
Oh, it's just up or down is basically the way they look at it.
Me and Tony would both give this a fresh rating, but my
Whereas
fresh
I give
rating
it like a 95, you would probably give it like an 80, maybe like a B minus.
Yeah, something like that. It was, again, a lot of stuff did right, but a few things did wrong that I thought that could have been pretty easily avoided as far as story goes. So that's sort of my overview. Tony, do you want to give closing thoughts to the non-spoilers part of the podcast?
I think that for anyone that's an actual Star Wars fan, especially those that were burned by the prequels, it's a must-see. It's something that you're going to very, very much enjoy. Even if it has like a few lumps on it, I think that it's like just the spirit of the movie is there. Like the dialogue is way better than it has been. Like the characters are awesome. So it's definitely worth your time. Like I'm sure most of you are going to go anyway, but see it as soon as you can. Try to not get spoiled by for some of the things. I actually had, whenever I mentioned Star Wars, I had 3 people tweet at me spoilers that happened at the end of this movie. So you even have to be careful of that.
Who did? Okay. Before we actually, okay, so I want to just digress here for a moment. Who did? Who does that? I was online looking for spoilers all day long yesterday and didn't find anything until I went into a spoiler thread. Somebody like some douchebag tweeted directly at you like, "Here's a spoiler from the end of the movie."
Yeah, 3 different people. I had 3 different people, and we are in the spoiler version of the podcast. I want you guys, if you don't want to be spoiled, you have 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. I had 3 tweets that were just like Han Solo dies.
Were you okay?
I was not
Did
surprised.
okay?
I honestly thought like there were a lot of things that just from the expanded universe that I thought that they would take, and a lot of those things actually did end up showing up. I know it's not exactly expanded universe, but it's got a few things from that. But I was like, I straight up got multiple tweets from people that were like, you know, Han Solo dies, right? And then I got a few misinformation tweets as well.
Well, I, yeah, I was expecting the Han Solo thing. I was expecting the Kylo Ren thing. There was one thing that I was expecting was that. So again, we're in the spoilers person podcast, so I can talk about this. But the revelation that Kylo Ren was Han Solo's son, was kind of cool. I liked that idea, but that was one of those things that ultimately I felt like could have used a little bit more build-up or something, because when we get to that part at the end where Kylo Ren is there with the sword and Han's facing off against him, we don't have any idea what kind of history these guys had as far as like was Han a good dad? Did he, did he show his son enough love when he was coming up? Is that part of the reason why he's doing it? How long has he been divorced or whatever away from Leia? How much of a deadbeat is he actually? The idea I think that they wanted to get across, and I think they kind of mentioned a little bit, is that he and Leia split up partly because Kylo Ren went to the dark side and Han sort of blamed himself, or just couldn't deal with it, which
Well, I
is
mean, it
okay.
pretty
But
much tore that whole family apart because like Luke's in hiding, like everything is just like kind of out there right now because of what happened with Kylo or Ben, I guess.
well, I mean, he calls himself Kylo.
Yeah,
But it
which I don't
was
like. People all, like put that towards like half Skywalker, half Solo Kylo, which I kind of like the name. I think it sounds cool.
well, it is cool. But there's the well, this is more to do with the speculation. But they talk about the Knights of Ren briefly, and then that plot point is completely unimportant in this movie. Now, maybe that's just them laying groundwork for the future, but there was a lot of sort of speculation ahead of time, like, what are the Knights of Ren? What is this about? And guess what? You do not find out
Yeah, you
anything
don't
about that
find
in
out
this movie.
anything. Like you barely get to see who the new kind of Emperor character is. Like,
And not in
who's it?
person.
Snoke?
Yes, Snoke. I can't. So he is showing himself as a hologram, right? Like the first time I saw him, I was like, "Holy crap, that dude's a giant!"
Yeah,
He
kind of.
has
I
like
was
three.
kind of hoping he was kind of a giant,
Well, we
but
don't know, right? Like he could actually be a giant, or he could be like 2 feet tall,
yeah,
and hilariously like. I don't want them to go that direction, but I
Episode
will
9
have
just
fun
ends
thinking
whenever
about it.
Chewie stomps on him or something.
Um,
That is
but
Andy
yeah, that
Serkis,
was
by the way.
yes. Playing a somewhat Gollum looking character, but I'm still creepy. I'm not
Yeah,
knocking that. Um, but then there was the fact that Rey, I felt like I, I don't know, like she becomes a Force user at the end, and it's just like, now I can do everything that a Jedi can do. I can do a lightsaber fight. I can do the mind control trick. I'm good. I know how to do all of it. And I was like, that doesn't take any training or anything.
well,
Like you just pick it up.
the only reason she won that fight, though, is because Chewbacca shot him in the nuts.
I thought in the thigh, but
It was
okay.
in the thigh, but it looked like a nut shot. I was entertained by the thought of Chewbacca shooting a laser into somebody's nuts. But
And
like
that's like
I
super laser too. This is
yeah,
I kept coming back to that blaster being awesome, so they could set that thing up where it's just like totally rips his thigh open.
yeah,
Which
you
I
see
will
Han
say,
like take the that blaster from Chewie whenever Chewie gets hurt, and he's like, I like this.
well, which I'm like,
I'm
how
sure
is
he
they've
fired
been
it at
together for
some other.
70 something years? How has he not ever fired it before? Um, But yeah, I thought that the death scene between Han and Kylo, especially the leading up to it when he's about to surrender, I saw some people thinking that he was like faking Han out, but there's no reason
There
for that.
there was real conflict there. Like, you see him literally, like, kneeling down in front of Vader's mask asking, like, for help because, like, he's feeling the light side coming back into him. Like,
Yeah,
that was
that
one of
was
my favorite
cool.
things about the character is that he was fully conflicted.
And he's fighting against the light, which is not something you really see, and I have no idea how that works logistically. I'm just like, I just really want to paint like flowers and go frolicking in the park, but I won't ever be as powerful as Vader if I don't. So I gotta kill
And
stuff.
and in that scene, like, even the lighting was showing the conflict, which it might have been a little bit over dramatic because you're seeing the light from outside where it's kind of blue, and then the light from the interior of the ship where it's red and it's covering half of his face each way. And whenever the sun thing actually fades, it goes completely red, and that's whenever he takes out Solo. Like, it was a
I thought
little
it
bit
was
like
fine with all the
cheesy in
lighting
some
stuff.
ways, but
It's
it
a
was also
movie.
pretty awesome.
I didn't think any of that was over the top. Like it's if you're using colors for symbolism in a movie, that's how you make a movie. All right,
Yeah.
things are on screen for a purpose, and maybe it's over the top a little bit, but actually that didn't bother me at all. But it felt like, and not just with the Force, but Rey felt a bit of a Mary Sue character, which I am
Explain to
not
Mary
not
Sue for those who don't know.
so, she's overpowered.
Okay.
Okay, Rey is OP at everything. Now that's not the worst thing in the world. Okay, that's not a damning like this ruins the story. It can be for a great story. I really like the Honor Harrington novels. Honor Harrington, super Mary Sue, always wins every fight. She's the best at everything, and that's how Rey is. And I was fine with it in the pilot stuff. Like I really liked when she was like, "I know how to fix your ship. I know what this is," and she's sort of like geeking out about the Millennium Falcon. But it did feel like it went quite a bit over the top in like when she started. It wasn't just the lightsaber thing, which I sort of understand. A, Kylo Ren isn't as trained as some of the Jedi we've seen, and B, he's wounded, so she's kind of able to tap into some of the Force and defend herself a little bit. But it was the mind control thing
Yeah.
and
That
the
was
like Force pulling.
the like just having those right off the bat whenever you see people like Luke and Anakin, we didn't get to see like his very beginning parts of his training where he could move things. He had those instincts like back in episode 1, like the pod racing and things like that, where all of his reflexes were heightened. But I don't know if there's any Jedi before that just all of a sudden was able to like do a force pull and just grab like the lightsaber out of the snow, or to be able to do like Jedi mind tricks without training. But it also seemed like whenever when Kylo was kind of torturing her and trying to get the information out of her, that he kind of like woke something up inside of her at that point too.
I got that a little bit as well. I just, that moment where she grabs the lightsaber was one of those moments I was talking about earlier where it's a great moment, right? Like it's awesome to see that happen, but there's a part of me that's like, okay, I'm missing how we got to this. Like we've never seen anybody jump that high in ability in the Force before. Maybe it happens all the time. Maybe it's a normal thing, but they didn't they didn't lay any ground rules for it. It's like, oh yeah, by the way, all that training that everybody else had to do, she doesn't need it because she's awesome. Um, and
And she
maybe she
could be like
is.
some sort of anomaly in the Force and everything. It could be like the Force Awakens games where you're just seeing someone who's immensely more powerful than you get to see before.
Yeah, it could be. It could be. I'm trying to think of other specifics that were. I mean, obviously, maybe my biggest gripe was the the third Death Star. Now they're not
Yeah,
calling it Death Star. They did they. I know in the marketing they talked about it being called Star Killer Base, but I don't think they actually used that name in the
they did
title.
at one
I
point.
mean, oh, they did.
Yeah, I think it was what the Resistance called it. They called it
Okay,
Star Killer Base. I don't think that's what the Emperor or the first whatever called it, First Order.
I'm gonna wait on my specifics about the ending of the movie for a second, and also mention I was bringing up earlier, sort of vaguely as possible, but there's this disconnect between the Republic still exists for half of the movie, but then they've somehow like spun off this other arm that's called the Resistance. For some reason, they're not called the Rebellion anymore, even though Rebellion and Resistance basically mean exactly the same thing, but we have to have a new word because it's a new movie. and we can't just be the Republic because they get blown up.
Yeah.
Like and it's almost
Violently and without warning. Like, it's just like, oh, the Republic's gone.
and it's a mirror of that moment in in A New Hope where the Death Star blows up Alderaan, but you at least there you have a little bit of a sense of what that meant because we have Leia there who that's her home planet and she's watching her home get destroyed. Here we're like we don't know anything about what the Republic is, what
Yeah,
they're
we only
doing.
saw maybe like 15 to 30 seconds of that planet overall. Like, we don't know if the new Senate is very good. We don't know anything about it. It looks like everything's nice on that planet. Like, people are at a party and then all of a sudden it's blown up.
Yeah, and that was another thing that I felt like okay, you're first of all, you just doing it seemed like we're just doing this because that's what they did in the first movie. And it's not just the first movie. There's a lot of sort of greatest hits moments from all three, 4, 5, and 6 movies. But it just there was no weight to that. And there was not a great amount of weight to it in the original A New Hope, I will admit. But at least it felt like that this was something significant because it felt like an impact on Leia as a character. And here it's just like there's this whole 30 years of history that just got destroyed that we never knew. So they blew up something we know nothing about. And that to me was like, I wanted to know, like, I mean, I'm probably going to read some of the Journey to the Force Awakens novels that explain what happened in those 30 years in between, but now it doesn't even matter. Like, you just
Yeah.
blew it up.
And now it's like on even keel. It's back to like Resistance versus First Order, even though no one really has a grip on the galaxy. It's like probably a galaxy in kind of chaos right now.
Yeah, and they had that whole planet that apparently can move around somehow, and I don't even want to get into the specifics of that because it didn't make sense for the Death Star either. So,
I don't
who?
like, was it actually moving around or was it just like blasting it into the stars?
Well, it used up an entire star to make that laser, so it has to
That's
move to a
true.
different star, right?
Which
I
makes it
think.
make more sense for it being called Star Killer. But
Anyway, and to top it all off, again, to relive all the greatest hits, they had their own trench run, which I mean, it's just not as good as the trench run in the new A New Hope, and it happening at the same time when Rey and Kylo Ren are having their lightsaber fight, which I was just sort of like, I don't even want to cut to this. I just want to see what happens with these guys fighting with lightsabers, and none of them.
yeah, 3 people in the forest mattered more to me than like the entirety of that base. And like Poe
Right, and
Dameron's cool, but he's not as cool as a lightsaber fight, the first one in that movie. Other than whenever like Kylo just goes off on like computer consoles.
that was a lot of fun. Like him just thrashing that console with his lightsaber. And
I
the
love
moment,
whenever
like,
like he's breaking the torture chair, like he's just so pissed, and you just see like 2 stormtroopers about to walk by, but there's just all these sparks, and they're like, nah, and they just turn
they turn
around.
around. That was pretty epic. Um, so yeah, those were a lot of my big problems. There was a lot of things that. Now I will say there's some things that really worked. Like when they get to the Millennium Falcon, I cheered because
Yeah, I
that
did
felt
too.
like it
Like,
had
I was in a
really
theater
earned.
where like we had 125 seats there. The guy that organized it bought all but 5, so there were just these like 5 random people that had no idea what was going on. Like, because it was just like the guy went up and gave like a speech before the movies and all that sort of stuff. And like people were like, whenever you first see that Millennium Falcon, like with the little fake out, like, no, that's a piece of junk. Then they blow up the nice one and look over. Like, people were literally jumping out of their seats at that moment.
Yeah, and it was one of those things where once they said that, and like I knew a half a second before, I was like, I know what's going to happen here. That's going to be the Millennium Falcon, isn't it? But it was still so awesome to see that on screen, to see Rey piloting it. Like I said, I had her being a great pilot was awesome, because you kind of could buy into some of that stuff. But her and Finn working together, blowing up the TIE fighters with the maneuvers that they do was all really, really great. And then it's just like, oh, by the way, also Han Solo is in the neighborhood. And he's going to be in the party, which again, I liked Han Solo being part of the movie. Like he was great in it, but like the way he enters is just sort of like, oh, and,
Well, they
and
said like they gave a throwaway line to it. They're like, well, we were scanning all these different systems for like the Millennium Falcon signature, but that's a lot of distance to cover.
how long has he been scanning for it? It's just had this
like 10
subroutine
years or
running this
something
whole
like that.
time. Like one of these days, this program's gonna pay off. I'm just gonna keep it minimized in my taskbar. I mean,
They implied they've been looking for a long time.
he's been doing other stuff in the meantime too, I guess. But
Yeah, more smuggling and doing his like basic old Han stuff.
it didn't seem like the kind of thing he should have got lost track of, considering that he lost it to one guy stole it from him, who we knew who stole it from him. We get it back from that guy if you know who stole it. Anyway,
Well,
like I
after
said,
he like tracked down that guy, it had already been sold to somebody else, and then it was taken again by somebody and moved to like the fourth or fifth planet.
yeah. There's an explanation. I'm just saying
I know.
it's
I'm just like I get what you're saying. Like it seems a little convenient.
there's some stuff that well, yes, plot convenience abounds in this movie. Poe Dameron does not die in that TIE fighter crash. As hopefully you know if you're watching the spoilers version. But the sequence with the not Sarlacc was awesome though. Like when the thing eats the TIE fighter that you don't even see, it's just like this sand monster underneath. Like once again, we could have just been on Tatooine and that could have just been a Sarlacc in some like larval form or something. But no, didn't get to have that. But then he just shows up later on. He's just like, now I'm flying another plane. And we don't like nobody sees him at first. Like we have to wait 10 minutes before Finn finally gets to him. He's like, "You're alive?" And then get the explanation. It's just sort of like, yeah, he's plot armor. It's okay. Which bothered me a lot more than like everybody else's plot armor. You know, if you can sort of, you know, the Millennium Falcon not getting blown up by the TIE fighter is okay. It just seemed like there should have been more weight to him coming back than just like, I'm here now. In another fighter jet.
And he still has the coolest X-Wing ever, though.
It's pretty cool X-Wing. He's a pretty great fighter. I want to see him and Rey like fly with each other or against each other.
That would be pretty awesome. I want to see like, or I'm probably gonna buy the Lego set of Poe Dameron's X-Wing just to have the black one. Looks so good.
Speaking of what you want to see, okay. Also, since we're doing spoilers, we should mention the end of the movie, which is, I mean, finally, like everybody asks, why is Luke not in the trailers? Because there's only 2 shots where he's in.
Yeah, he's in for maybe 30, 45 seconds, something like that for the entire movie. I expected to see a lot more of Luke actually. Like I thought that there would be at least a few minutes because they kept showing him like in the making of stuff, and they showed him like with his beard and everything. It's like they literally had him for an afternoon, maybe.
I think they may have filmed some episode 8 stuff at the same time because I'm pretty sure they're going to pick up there on that same place in episode 8 and have him and Rey talk or train or something. So I wouldn't be surprised if he was on the island for more than an afternoon, but that scene didn't take that long to shoot.
Yeah.
And get the helicopter up to do the helicopter part.
What are the odds on you think that that's his niece? That Rey is his niece?
From Han and Leia again?
Yeah. Since in the expanded universe, they were twins.
I don't know. Okay, I thought that she would be Poe Dameron's sister. And the way he kind of like reacted which that was one line that I was like,
I thought that she was going to be Kylo Ren's sister, not Poe Dameron's.
That's what I meant. Kylo Ren's sister.
I was just making sure.
But they say like they're with a girl, and he's like, a girl? And in hindsight, it's just like him reacting to there being a girl, being a main character in the Star Wars universe, as a meta commentary. But at the time, I was like, what does he? You know, he knows about girls, right? He knows what that is.
It'd be kind of funny if he was just so cooped up. See, that was Anakin's undoing. They never let him like get out and talk to girls enough.
Or he got out and talked to girls, and that was his undoing, Tony. That may have been the problem. It's
just saying, like,
opinion there.
It's the prohibition thing. Like you can't make it illegal. It just makes it more alluring.
Well, regardless, he seemed like really shocked that there would be a girl. And so the way he read that line, I was like, all right, that's going to be something significant. Like he knows about some girl that he's, like, oh man, she showed up. But then no, he didn't ever like recognize her or know anything about her that he said. He was just like, man, you miss some people, don't you? And like didn't know who she was.
Well, while he was interrogating, like she had the thought of like how Han is kind of like the father she never had. And he's like, he will disappoint you. All this other stuff. Like, I thought that he was going to find out there because it's just like, it seems like that would be his sister. It really does. And I think Luke is going to end up revealing that. And it was also like kind of in the long embrace that Leia had with her at the end, which could have just been about Han, but it seemed like there was a little bit more there. Like she was the one that left her on Jakku or Jaka. I can't remember how that is
Jakku.
pronounced.
Yeah. It's
Carrie
I don't know.
Fisher, like she's never been the greatest actor, but I liked her. I thought she did pretty well in this. The only thing that didn't really make it for her was like her voice is completely different. Like it sounds like she's
I
been smoking.
I felt like of the original 3 that we saw, she was maybe the weakest link. Uh
And
I
but
mean
that's
Han
also
Solo
like
is
because Chewie's awesome.
well, also Harrison Ford has been acting the whole time since then. She's kind of given it up, so I think she might be a little bit rusty. It didn't take me out of the movie necessarily, but I did feel like she was not amazing in it.
Yeah.
She did okay.
Well, like
Um,
I felt like her role was more important than it had been in some of the other ones where she was just like the damsel in distress and all that. Like there wasn't
it
any depth to Leia before these movies, really.
it was nice to see her have more of a leadership role, but it was, I just didn't think she did a great job acting. She did an
Yeah.
okay job, but it wasn't amazing. It wasn't like I'm really sold
Especially
it.
whenever
Which
you look at Boyega and those other people, like, and I was actually kind of surprised that Finn had more of like an American accent because like you hear him in Attack the Block and you can barely understand him. He almost needs subtitles.
well, he's an actor, man. He's got to do what he has to do for the role.
I know. I was just saying he did a good job with it.
But I thought to go back to the Luke thing, I almost felt like that could have waited, like for the next movie. I almost felt like if her and Chewie had made the jump to hyperspace and be like, all right, we're gonna go find Luke. We have the map now. Which man, that whole map thing was just such a giant MacGuffin,
Yeah,
in maybe the worst sense of the word. You're like, they literally have pieces of a map. It's a holographic map, but it's still like somebody tore the map up. We have to reassemble all the pieces. Anyway, lots of plot convenience in this movie. But I would have almost liked it better if they had gone to that, like gone off looking for him, and then we just like cut to the beginning of the next one and they find him.
yeah,
Uh, but I don't know. Like there was that moment at the end was kind of cool, but like she's holding out that lightsaber for so long.
yeah. Like
I was like,
it was
say
probably
something.
awkward. It was probably awkward to do that scene because she was just like standing there as like the little drone cameras like flying by or the helicopter or whatever. It's like,
It was probably a
okay,
helicopter.
Luke should probably react.
I don't know. Like it was neat to have the tension drawn out, but I knew that was the end of the movie, so it's not like, man, when he says something, it's gonna be awesome. It's gonna be like, man, when he says something in a year and a half, it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, the first thing that happened whenever we were done is someone was like 580 days until the next one.
Well, there is Rogue One coming out, Tony. That's in Christmas of
Yeah.
next year. So
But
that's the
like to
prequel, though.
continue this actual story, it's going to be a little longer.
A little bit. I think that is all that I have to say that I need to say about The Force Awakens, Tony. Had a lot of fun with it, enjoyed it, a lot of great moments of humor, but I felt like the story was lackluster for all the reasons that I've just laid out, and a few other ones that maybe I've forgotten, but yes. Could have
We
done a
kept
little
you
bit
guys
less
long.
fan service to the original, in my
Yeah.
opinion.
Well, like it like my only real complaint was it was pretty much a New Hope relabeled, some better characters, some other stuff. But like I was just so happy that it was an actual Star Wars movie, not like some strange parody like the prequels ended up feeling like.
Well, I just felt like when they did something different that wasn't just like now it's bigger, which is what they did with a lot of things. You have a ostensibly Darth Vader ripoff, but when you make him different and you actually like, all right, this guy's kind of wanting to be Darth Vader, but he's also conflicted in a lot of stuff. He was not to get too highbrow, but his character was almost a sort of metaphor for making this movie. It's like, we want to be just like those other guys. We kind of want to go do our own thing. And like being torn between those two sort of was a little bit of the undoing of, not undoing because I'm not saying it's a bad movie, but it hurt this movie to be torn between those wanting to go forward and wanting to really pay homage. And it didn't ever quite make up its mind. But
And now we get to see Rian Johnson's version.
which I'm pumped for because
Yeah.
I really like Rian Johnson. I mean, I think we mentioned this already, but Daisy Ridley as an actress in this movie just killed it.
Yeah, she did.
Again, she in the hands of a lesser actress, all of the powers that she ends up getting and all of her just over the top, I'm good at everything, could have been way more annoying than it
Yeah.
was. And she brought a gravity to that character that does not exactly exist in the script. But she really, really played it in a great, great way. And I think she's maybe like her and John Boyega are the heart of this series going forward. I cannot wait to see what kind of adventures they're going to have.
Yeah, it's gonna be awesome. I'm excited. And yeah, I think that's everything that I've got to say about it. If you guys like this review, we want you to go to humanechoes.com and check out some of the other awesome stuff we have there. Every time we do a movie, there's a rundown post. We do our normal podcast every Friday. And if you want more bonus podcast stuff, if you go to the humanechoes.com site and click on the subscribe link on the right-hand side or at the very top, you will get a bonus podcast every 2 weeks. You can donate as little as $2 and go up to 20, and it's just an excellent way to keep the lights on here. We will keep bringing you more content, and thank you guys very much for listening.
And we will be back next week with our review of Silent Night, Deadly Night for Christmas. I've actually started watching that. That's a surprisingly good movie so far, Tony.
Yeah, I've been
What it
wanting to
is?
see it for a while just because of the poster. Like, I saw that it's not exactly highly rated on Rotten Tomatoes. It's got like a 50%, but it's like you
It's
said, there's
not
a 50% chance you're gonna like it, and there's a 50% chance you're gonna hate it.
I don't know that it's necessarily a good movie, but it's a lot of fun in the sort of 80s slasher flick way. And we're not talking about that because it's a Star Wars review, but I'm definitely looking forward to talking about that next week. So
All
stay
right.
tuned.
See you guys next week. Have a good one.
Bye.